Shares is flashier, showier, more fun, exciting. When you're in the share market and you've got a significant portfolio, you're buying the financial review every day and you're reading what stocks are value and why have they gone up, and you want explanations and you're trying to find every article on that company. Whereas property's not like that. It's almost boring. When you buy it, you forget about it. You go in there, you get it set up, you put the tenant in, and you just switch off. And that's what I like about it, because you can actually have a life, even though you've got millions and millions of dollars in debt. You know, the money comes in, the rent comes in like clockwork every month. It's so predictable, it's boring. It's like utterly boring. You know, it's the utterly boring way to create wealth. But that's great, isn't it? If it works, it should be boring. Boring is good. Boring is predictable. Boring is reliable, dependable. Exactly. Boring people are great. Accountants are boring. Property's boring. Shares are flashy, ritzy, like the Wolf of Wall Street. You're up one minute, you're down the next. You know, you don't talk about your losses. You're there for the win. It's all of that excitement. You know, I get all of that, but it's not really where I want my money to be. It's where it's fine to be for a horse race. You get kicks out of those sorts of things, but not big term punting with money. You know, and when it does turn south, and I've seen that, it gets awfully ugly really quickly. It can with property too, but if you do your research, get all the numbers, do the research, get a good deal when you get in there, you're set for life. For example, a mate of mine, so he bought a shopping centre, right? Paid $20 million, right? Went in with two mates, and they bought it. I think the anchor tenant was, you know, like massive national company, all retail tenants in the shopping, massive shopping centre, big car park in Adelaide. Now, what happened was the GFC hit. He didn't read his lease with Target. There was a clause in there that said Target didn't have to pay rent if the mall had a higher than 80% vacancy rate, right? Now that little one paragraph, it didn't come into play, it didn't get below 80, but the bank became aware of it and they said it's very close to 80, so we're going to massively downscale the valuation. And often these deals, the massive deals, there's only one or two lenders that really get it and they're happy to lend on it. So this lender that they were embedded with said, we're not happy with this deal anymore, we want out. So they were forced to sell, and they sold at $5 million. Right, cost him his marriage. He didn't tell me about it. The bank wrote the debt off. He didn't make my friend go bankrupt. Right, the only bid they could get when they put it back on the market, because they bought it pre-GFC and they sold it post-GFC. So the whole market cooled down a lot over that, and the ability to be able to borrow money, especially at a massive level, was diminished because the source of funds dried up. So the banks got less money to lend, and they'll only lend it out on really good blue chip deals. And this actually fell from blue chip to like mediocre deal. So he was looking at losing everything, and he did. We caught up recently and had lunch, and it came out, and I had no idea. I always held him up on a pedestal. He was like the property guru, accounting wise, in Adelaide, and he got hammered on this deal. He had to leave his accountancy firm, like the partnership. He knew that if he went broke, that they would have just cut him off at the knees. So he went out on his own, and so he's lost his dream partnership role as an accountant. He's lost his wife. He's lost all his money on one deal. So it does happen, you know? And it's not like, you just think that the window that you've seen property, it's been gradually climbing. And it does that for 10 years. And then we have an adjustment, and you see people scrambling for cover, but you haven't seen that yet. It'll come. But if you've got enough equity built up, if you buy it and hold it for long enough and it creeps up in value, when it drops, it's never going to go below what you paid for it back here. You know? Like, so if they've doubled in value and there's a 30% correction, which is massive, you know, you've had 100% growth. You're only taking, you still got 70%, you know?
So you just got to ride that out.
You just got to ride it out. You just got to have big balls.
Okay with us doing some video? It's not of you, it's just of me.
So if I just manage to run my business and pay my day-to-day bills and shuffle money between bank accounts, that's all I need to do. And that's what most people do, but they don't have this hobby on the side that's, you know, going up while they're sleeping, you know? And that's, you're building it up for that day when you stop working, you know. So the growth that I've achieved in my property has been phenomenal, and it's certainly taken the pressure off in my business. So I know that if I, you know, like, everyone's under an immense amount of pressure to put 10% away and put it in superannuation. I don't do that, because I know that I'm putting 10% of my time into my properties, and that's my superannuation. You know, the superannuation industry hasn't worked out in Australia like the government intended it to, but my properties have. And if you look at the growth and the net worth of my property portfolio, it just gets better and better and better. You know, and it's something that it's been put in the bottom drawer. I am monitoring it and managing it, and I do take the phone calls and go and deal with the properties when there are issues. I'm onto it, but it's not the focus of all my time and energy. It's just like a sideline. So you can see how it's sort of, you know, if 90% of my time's going into my business and 10% is going into my property, and yet the property's going amazingly well and is going to be able to set me up for life. Accountancy practice is great as well, but it's just paying all the bills. It's out of whack. It doesn't correspond. You know, like, there is a school of thought that says allocate 20% of your time to your property and build that up. But my situation is quite unique, that my business and anyone's business should be always there so that a lender lending you money knows that income is enough to service this if there's a readjustment in property. And all you want to do is be able to shelter from the storm, so that when there is a rough patch in the property, the business will carry it. You don't have to sell. When the curve goes like this and everyone's screaming and running for cover down here, you can just gradually ride it out and wait for it to recover, and then it's all good. You know, it's where you see these people who just want to go headlong into property that they crash because they throw their business away, see the profits that can be made in property, and it's sexy, it's fun, it's really good, and the business is a grind. So they launch into that, and then when that curve goes like that, they're at this bottom point where they're staring down the barrel, and the bank, everyone, property market, everyone's turned against them, and they've got nowhere to turn. You know, so I'm mindful of that. I don't even want to get in that position, because the market always
going to come back.
It always comes back. Well, you know, no one knows for sure. It could just drop off a cliff. But if you look at history, it's always come back. It's on this gradual growth rate like that. And the leverage you can get with, like, you can borrow an insane amount of money. You know, if you get all the numbers stacking up right, the banks love you and they will back you and they will give you millions and millions of dollars, which is crazy. They won't give you that if you go into the share market. You know, but if you get, so if you can ride out that storm, and the market always overreacts. Everyone's overconfident when it's going up and everyone's overly negative when it's going down. So if you sell down there, you're actually selling at a price which is actually worse than what it should be. You've got no option but to ride it out and wait for it to come back up. It's all timing. There's no doubt about it. You'll make more money, in my opinion, at a property. The returns might be slightly less, but it's on a much bigger amount. You know, so It's like, would you rather make 3% on $1 million or 20% on $50,000? You know, it's more commercial, but residential, you've got your own set of issues. Like all my properties moving forward, unless a really, really good deal comes up residential, I want to go for commercial, because when you look at all my clients, the ones that have retired early have been through commercial, and it's been because the rent for commercial is going up at a faster rate than inflation. And there's all these different rules with commercial properties that make it much more attractive for an investor, because when the tenant leaves, they have to reinstate it, repaint it, like renovate it, which is a massive cost when you're a residential. The tenant moves out and it's called wear and tear. It's called wear and tear when it's commercial property, but the tenant pays for it. It's crazy. And also the commercial tenant pays all the council rates, water rates, all the insurance, everything, all the bills along the way. So my gut feeling with commercial is no one wants more commercial land to be released in beautiful residential areas like this. So what you've got is you're going to have people fighting over the existing stuff. You know, so if it's already been zoned commercial, that's going to become more scarce. You know, it's supply and demand. They'll let you bash down the houses and put 4 up. Thank you. But they won't let you put in a shopping centre here, or buy all the neighbours and make them commercial as well. You know? And so, I think commercial is set to do really well moving forward, and that's all I want to move in that space, because people think it's trickier, but it's actually, I reckon it works easier. You just get the people around you to draft up different leases and all of that, and the banks understand it. When you get big enough, you actually borrow. Like, people think, well, it's costing more money to borrow for commercial properties. And it does, but when you get scale, you can borrow commercial money, not a lot of people know this, at a lower rate than residential. And the bank will say to you, well, that's because it's such a big deal, there's less resources required in the office to manage it. You think, what about your risk? Anyway, that's the way it works.